The facade pattern is, again, quite a simple concept. If you take a look at the diagram on the left, the blue boxes represent clients that want to use components within the system, the orange boxes. The way it's set up at the moment is quite complex. All the clients need to know everything there is to know about the structure of the orange components. They need to know which components are there and which to call, the order in which to call them to achieve the desired result, and so on. And that makes the lines of communication quite complex. It also means that the clients are now dependent upon the structure of the subsystem. That's not a desirable thing when we're trying to separate concerns. We don't want to build knowledge about the subsystem into those clients. So it's a good thing if we can separate the clients from the subsystem so that they are no longer dependent upon so many components. And that's where the facade comes in. As the intent says, it provides a high-level interface to facilitate the use of lower-level functionality. And it looks like this. See now how the clients have been considerably simplified. They no longer have to interact with the individual components within the subsystem. They only need to have dependency on that one facade component. And built into that facade is the knowledge about the subsystem. If the first client, instead of calling components 1 and 2, just has to call the facade and a method within that facade to say, I want you to do stuff for me. And the facade knows that, well, this is a method that's going to need components 1 and 2 and the order in which to call them to achieve the result, and then pass the result back to the client. So that's considerably less complex in terms of dependencies, and that's a good thing. So here we have an example. Perhaps the action methods in managed beans are going to be calling various components. We've got A and B for managed bean 1. We've got A and E for managed bean 2, and so on. These managed beans have a dependency upon all those subcomponents, and we want to try to separate those out. So we could build in a facade. Well, with the USDP that we were looking at in the last learning block, we know that we will have in our application a user interface class of some sort, a boundary class. That boundary class could serve as the facade for the rest of the application. Action methods in the managed beans now just call a suitable method in the interface class, and then the interface class will interact with the control classes, with the entity classes, and do all of that in the right order to achieve the right effect. That will make the managed bean functionality so much easier, so much simpler, and that's probably a good thing too. Not too many participants in this pattern. We have just the facade, and we have subsystems. Now I've got here the control servlet as a facade. It's a front controller, it's effectively acting as a facade. But we could also put in our own facades for subsystems within our application. So we might decide that there needs to be a facade for the student part of the application, or there needs to be a facade for the lecturer part of the application. So you're not limited to one facade. Wherever you have a subsystem, and there's complexity in terms of clients interacting with that subsystem, you can simplify that by making use of a facade for that subsystem.